Stocks closed mixed on Wall Street. The Dow and the S&P 500 see minor gains while Nasdaq corrects. In his testimony to the Senate, Fed Chair Jerome Powell also says that policymakers are in no hurry to cut interest rates further. Asian markets trade mixed as the Fed signals that it is in no hurry to cut rates. The GIFT Nifty is also suggesting a higher start for the Indian market. Crude prices extend gains. Brent hit $77 a barrel over threats of sanctions and concerns over the supply of Russian and Iranian oil. The gold rally pauses. Prices move off the record levels on profit booking. CPI inflation for the month of January is expected to come in at 4.53% versus 5.22% in December, with food prices expected to ease. Core CPI is expected to remain flat at 3.7% versus 3.6% in December. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, unfazed by the recent rupee depreciation, says other developed and emerging market currencies have fared worse. Also adds state governments have not spent 1 lakh crore rupees sanctioned by the centre and urges the states to spend more. Hello, good morning. Thank you so much for tuning in to CNBC-TV18. You're watching Power Breakfast with me, Vinny Motiwala. A quick look at what's happened in the Asian markets this morning. A very mixed opening that we're seeing coming in from the Asian markets. While Taiwanese index is managing to hold on to gains of 0.5%, Hang Seng holding on to gains of 0.6%, we're seeing Shanghai that's trading a bit muted with guts of almost 0.2%. ASX 200 quite flattish. That's an Australian index that's just trading with minor gains of 0.1%, while Nikkei is holding on to gains of 0.3%. Now, all this is happening only because we had commentary that came in from Fed Powell that is signaling no urgency in terms to lower rates further. Let's look at the Nifty implied open because that's suggesting a slight bit of a mild positive start as of now for the Indian markets. Yesterday, although we'd seen that it was suggesting a positive start, but then we saw what happened in the market and we saw a decline. So as of now, hoping that we do see a bit of a green coming in on the screen for the Indian markets. 43 points uptick is what the Nifty implied open is indicating. But let's look at what happened in the US markets. Now, Wall Street that ended flat to mixed with S&P 500 gaining just above the flat line, while the Nasdaq Composite lost almost 0.3%. When you're looking at the Dow Jones, that also gained 123 points at its close. Investors now are looking ahead of the fresh inflation data that is due later today, while the producer price index will be released tomorrow. So that's an important update that we're watching out for in terms of the US markets. Also, let's listen into US Federal Reserve's Jerome Powell, who reaffirmed the central bank's cautious stance on interest rates during his testimony before the Congress. Listen in to what he had to say.
The strong labor market conditions in recent years have helped narrow long-standing disparities in employment and earnings across demographic groups. Inflation has eased significantly over the past 2 years, but remains somewhat elevated relative to our 2% longer-term goal. PCE prices rose 2.6% over the 12 months ending in December, and excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 2.8%. With our policy stance now significantly less restrictive than it had been, and the economy remaining strong, we do not need to be in a hurry to adjust our policy stance. We know that reducing policy restraint too fast or too much could hinder progress on inflation. At the same time, reducing policy restraint too slowly or too little could unduly weaken economic activity and employment.
Okay, that's the global market action that we have for you all this morning. But how is all this going to be impacting our Indian markets? We have a team of research joining in with us as always this morning. And, before we go across to Abhishek as well as to Darshan, let me take you all through what the market setup is looking like for today. Now, do not forget, yesterday also we saw a sharp fall coming in for the Nifty. It once 1 point of time in the day, it was below the 23,000 mark, though it closed just about the 23,000 mark. The Nifty 50 in the red for the 5th consecutive day is what we saw coming again. 45 of the 50 stocks on the Nifty 50 closed in the red. While we did see some bit of a sharp sell-off coming in on the Nifty mid and small cap, that underperformance for Nifty mid and small cap continued. Nifty mid cap plunged more than 3%, lowest levels in almost since June 4th, 2024. Small cap also fell almost more than 3% in trade, closing at the lowest level since Jan 28th. FIIs, that selling continued. FII selling came in at around 4,486 crores in yesterday's trading session. DIIs continue to be buyers. But what are we watching out for? Now, obviously, we did hear that commentary coming in from Fed Chair Jerome Powell. So let's watch out for how the Indian markets are going to react on that. Trump tariffs, trade wars, what's the issue on the global front? That continues to be focus area if there are any changes or any announcement that come in on that front. PM Modi's visit to the US is going to be a key factor that we'll be keeping an eye out on as well, and commentary that comes in maybe from funds. So yes, watch out for that. FII selling, like I said, that is at, it did see a sharp selling that we saw yesterday. They offloaded almost 1 lakh crores in 2025 so far. So we'll keep an eye out on where that's moving, because that's an important factor for the Indian markets. As of now, Nifty implied open indicating a bit of a positive start. 40-point uptick so far is what we're watching out for. But let's move on and go across to Abhishek, who's here with us to tell us what are the important stocks that we should be keeping on our radar this morning. Good morning, Abhishek.
Good morning. We need to begin with IRCTC. The revenue was up 10%, profits up nearly 14% YOY. Margins have contracted over there on a YOY basis by about 130 basis points. Berger Paints, weak numbers coming in over there. Revenue up just 3.2% YOY, while profits are down 1.5% YOY. In terms of Kolte Patil, the revenue is up multifold to about 350 crores, while they have reported a profit in Q3 of this fiscal versus loss in Q3 of previous fiscal. HEG, over there, the revenue is down almost 15% YOY. However, profits are up nearly 91% YOY. Vodafone Idea, good numbers coming in over there, given the fact that revenue is up only 1.7% YOY. However, their net losses have contracted, so it is now at 6,609 crore when compared to 7,176 crore of net loss that they reported in the same quarter last year. Marksans Pharma, strong numbers, revenue up 16.3% YOY and profits up 25.7% YOY. SAIL, the revenues up nearly 5% YOY. However, the profits have contracted by 66.5% on a YOY basis. Last but not the least, Lupin over there, margins are at 23.5% versus management guidance of 22 to 23%, and they have reported revenue growth of 11% YOY, while profits are up 39.5% YOY. Back to you.
Okay, Abhishek, thank you so much for those important stocks to watch out for in today's trading session. Let's go across to Sudarshan, who's here to tell us what's happening in the world of F&O. What are we watching out for today? Good morning.
Good morning, Vinny. So talking first of all, yesterday's session was day of big fall, while sensex Nifty saw a cut of more than 1%. The major fall was seen in broader markets, both Nifty mid-cap and small-cap index falling more than 3% each. And for today, GIFT Nifty is indicating a start with minor gains, but we'll have to see if the opening gains manage to sustain or not. Talking about the flows, there is no surprise. FI selling continues. Yesterday also in the cash market, they have sold nearly rupees 4,500 crore, while DIs have bought a little more than rupees 4,000 crore. In the index futures too, FIs have sold nearly 1,700 crore, and they have reduced long positions by 1,500 contracts. At the same time, they have added short positions. In the index option though, they have bought of shares worth nearly rupees 4,000 crore, but in the stock futures, they have sold around rupees 800 crore. Now, FI's long exposure is reduced to 14%, and on the client side, long exposure is at 71%. On the option front, 23,300 call and 23,400 call have seen major additions, and on the put side, 22,700 put has seen addition of nearly 31 lakh shares. Important levels for Nifty, support is now slipped below to 22,700 and resistance is now at 23,300. Stocks in focus, Apollo Hospitals, keep an eye because yesterday company had announced earnings. Earnings were better than expectations. When commentary was healthy, but stock had closed with a cut of nearly 7%. Today, when all the brokerages have put out the note, and most of the notes are positive. Second, Muthoot Finance, yesterday CLSA had upgraded the stock considering the big move in gold over the last few days, but stock had closed with a cut, so keep an eye on Muthoot as well.
Okay, Sudarshan, thank you so much for that. We'll keep an eye out on those names as well. But on that note, we're going to slip into a very short break. After the break, we'll tell you the CPI inflation for the month of January will be released today. What are we expecting? Let's come back and we'll talk about it. Welcome back. Thanks for staying tuned into Power Breakfast on CNBC-TV18. Now let's move on, and the National Statistical Organization is scheduled to announce the January consumer price inflation today at 4 p.m. We have Lata, who's joining in with us to tell us what are we expecting this time. What is the CNBC-TV18 poll suggesting for this? Lata, good morning.
The poll is expecting that the announcement today will be 4.53%. which is very good because it will be a good 80 basis points lower than the 5.2 that was recorded in December. Also, it's, of course, closer to the mandated 4%. From the year-ago level of 5.1% as well, this 4.53 looks good. The important number that to watch will also be the food inflation number. Well, the poll sees the food inflation number at 6.7%. which will be much better than the 8.4 that was recorded in December and 8.3 recorded in the year ago, January. This will actually be the most watched number. And yesterday we had the Niti Aayog agriculture member saying that he is very sure that food inflation is falling from January to April rather sharply. So we may get a downside positive surprise on food inflation. Core inflation will be 3.7. It has been at that level for some time now. So that's not important. It's only food that is expected to come down because of the prices of tomatoes, potatoes and onions having fallen, and tomatoes in particular very comprehensively. So that's the number to watch out for. If it comes below that 4.55 mark, then probably we will undershoot the Reserve Bank's this quarter number of 4.4. So very important number to watch, food inflation.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Lata. We'll keep an eye out on the data coming in today at 4 p.m. But moving on to the updates on the new income tax bill. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that the government is likely to table the new income tax bill in the parliament tomorrow. Once passed, the bill is likely to come into effect from the 1st of April this year. The new bill will replace 60-decade-old income tax bill and is aimed at making income tax rules simpler, more concise and easier to interpret. Okay, on that note, we're going to step into a very short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll get you what's happening in the world of commodities after this break. Welcome back. Thanks for staying tuned to Power Breakfast on CNBC-TV18 and bringing you some updates from the Paris AI Action Summit. The US and the UK have refused to sign the Paris AI Action Summit's declaration on inclusive and sustainable AI. The declaration was supported by 16 nations, including China and India. The UK cited a national interest while the US criticized Europe's excessive regulations. And as Prime Minister Narendra Modi draws a close to the bilateral visit to France, he is now headed to the United States, where he is scheduled to meet the US President Donald Trump. Parikshit joins us from Washington with what is likely to be on the agenda of the PM.
There will be clear asks on the table when Donald Trump meets Prime Minister Narendra Modi for that bilateral meeting here in Washington, D.C. One would be to reduce the trade deficit. We're told by sources that the Indian government has already prepared a list of 10 to 12 product lines where it could give concessions to Donald Trump. Now, this includes electronic devices, electronic products, and medical devices as well. US could urge India to buy more energy, oil and gas from the US, and therefore India could offer to have long-term LNG contracts with US energy companies. On the defense side, the Indian government has been considering proposals to acquire more Hercules transport aircraft from the US and also surveillance aircraft for the Indian Navy. There could be talk of a limited trade deal that has been discussed earlier also in the first Trump administration, and both sides could lay out a roadmap to conclude an early trade deal in the next 7 to 8 months. There could be a key meeting between Elon Musk and Prime Minister Narendra Modi as well, and there comes the push for lowering tariffs on imported cars into India. On the whole, India would want continuity as far as the technology partnership goes, the defense partnership, including the deal for GE 414 engines to be manufactured in India. US would want India to reduce the trade deficit, reduce the reliance on Russian oil and gas, and support US manufacturing in areas where China has a dominance.
Thanks for that. But Parikshit also met with the Republican Congressman Rich McCormick and spoke to him exclusively on the host of topics ranging from US and India's military sales ties and his views on tariffs imposed on other countries. Listen in.
When it comes to economy, when it comes to military might, when it comes to world vision, we see most things on the same light. We have a similar constitution. We have a similar outlook on world politics. There's a couple things I'd like to see refined. I'd love to have better military sales to India, but with that also, I'd like to see India not sell oil back to Europe to fund the war against Russia and Ukraine. I just don't want to see that happen. So I think we have some important things to talk about: trade fairness and that specific issue of oil sales. But overall, really value India as a strategic ally, somebody I want to see strengthen into the future so we can stand up, especially in a very important region. I think anything that's competitive with China, who since they've been a member of the World Trade Organization, has basically cheated their way to the top. They've tripled their economy with the Made in China initiative, but they've also been taken to court, I think, some 27 times by the United States, lost every single battle, and then just gets better at cheating. You'll see the rise of India, and we'll be able to hopefully turn to a country that's very friendly to produce similar products that China right now has the corner on, and they've done it through cornering the market through government supplements to businesses, picking winners and losers, and really doing unfair trade things. I think that India does it much better and can do it on the same price point. And I think anytime we can evolve a favorable nation over a country that's openly defying us and going against the things that we think are important for a democracy.
Okay, now it's time to move on and get you what's happening in the world of commodities. We have Manisha, as always, who's waiting by to tell us what should we watch out for. Manisha, good morning.
Morning, Vinny. Thank you for that. Well, I'll start with the gold prices, which have finally seen a pause from those record highs that we saw into the market, $29.40 an ounce, but it's trading below $2,900 right now after Powell testimony reaffirming that there's no urgency to cut or adjust rates at this point in time. Also, the markets are reacting to the Trump's 25% tariff on steel and aluminum, which is fueling fears of broader trade wars. But what the markets will watch out today is going to be the U.S. inflation data. Further cues for many of these markets will come in from that one. But also what has seen gains in the overnight market has been the crude oil prices. This is after Russia's production has fallen below the OPEC quota for the month of January. There are now new sanctions on individuals and tankers taking Iran crude to China, and the trade tensions continue to weigh on in sense of supplies as well. So while the crude prices continue to gain and now very close to $77 a barrel, precious metals and base metals have seen a bit of a decline in Asia right now.
Okay, Manisha, thank you so much for the latest update coming in what's happening in the commodity world. But that's all the time we have on this edition of Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. Thank you so much for tuning in. Up next, you have Bazaar Morning Call.